Hello and welcome to the Blues Focus podcast with me, your host, John Graham. And joining me as ever are Tom Oxford and Tom Garrett. And as last week, we will refer to Tom G, who is Tom Garrett, and then just singular Tom for this particular podcast. Thank you once again for downloading this pod, whether you did that on Spotify or iTunes, or if you're watching it on our YouTube channel, which is Blues Focus TV. Welcome. Hopefully the next sort of 40 minutes is going to be enjoyable. We've got lots to cover. And similar to the last pod, we'll look at a review of the previous game, which was Preston, and how that sort of game played out. Then obviously we want to talk about transfer news still in the window. Obviously a bit of business has been done over the last sort of 24 hours, and we're going to touch on that. And then finally, there's a bit of a gap now until the next game. So I think we're going to try and work out what Karanka may have in store for the team and the squad over the coming days, what we can work on based on the last few performances, and how we feel we're going to shape up as we go into the next two crucial games. So let's get involved and let's cover off the Preston game. So I think first things first, team selection. I think we've all been crying out for a little bit of continuity. So Tom G, I'll open this one up to you. What were your thoughts when you saw the team first up?
Yeah, I think we spoke about it last week, didn't we? I think the three of us, we were looking for a bit of consistency. So I think after the game against obviously Middlesbrough, to see the same team again, I think that's a good sign. Really, I think you've got to give credit to players where it's due. Obviously won the game. I thought the substitutions worked quite well as well when he made them at the right time. But I think, as I said before to you, I think, sometimes it's just the championship. You play like that against Middlesbrough, win 1-0, play like that against Preston at home and then lose 1-0. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Tom, what were your initial thoughts? Were you happy with it?
Yeah, going into the game, especially with the lineup being the same, I was delighted. I had high hopes. I suppose there was always that kind of thought that, we're awful at home, we might lose. And Preston are actually very impressive away from home. And they like to get at teams in the second half more so than the first, which is what they did to us. And I feel like we probably should have done better to expect that a bit more of Preston.
Yeah.
And obviously they're not good at home. So they're quite similar to us in that respect, but they've just picked up a few more results. So,
I think if we just focus on that initial first half performance, and I think it was very much a continuation, as you both have said, from the Borough game, which, that is always the hope, because I think that performance, every Blues fan would say that, okay, it's not exactly Brazil 70, but in the context of where we've been, that was a very, very good performance for Blues and something we could build on. And I think for me, the first half was incredibly scrappy for the first sort of probably 10 minutes. But I thought after that we sort of got it down okay. You could see there was a lot of really well organised positions and formations, certainly from the back line. So who just over to you, Tom. As far as the first half, who was your sort of the guy that really sort of, I guess, galvanised that performance? Who did you think played well?
To be fair, I thought everybody did their job relatively well. We didn't have too many scares in the first half. But I suppose if I had to pick someone out, I'd have probably said Ivan Sanchez in that first half. He had a few chances that he should have done better with, but it was good to see him getting in areas. Terrell looked quite composed, I thought. Yeah. I was impressed with Bella yet again. There was a few times where he got into really tight areas down the left-hand side. I think Bella started to become more consistent, and obviously that was a bit of an issue in his game, consistency and fitness, but he seems to be really, really improving now, and we need him in the squad, in particular Jeremy Bella, because he's probably our main source for assists. So
I think on Bella, for me, and this is where I think we probably need to try and shift the mindset just a little bit from, I think we've got into a position where we started to play better, so that's great. But I think, did we look overly threatening? Not really. I think we got in some very, very good positions, and there was a couple of occasions with Bella that he'd done his man. He had him on toast all night. But the quality into the really decisive areas, he hit massively overhit 2 crosses in the first half when there was plenty of people in the box, and I think it's that.
Yeah.
Now we've got, I think the nucleus of maybe an identity now. I think it's the fine tuning that's going to have to be, I think improved on if we're going to really start to create multiple chances. Because as well as what I thought we played in the first half, and I probably wouldn't have changed too much, have we created 3 or 4 absolutely gilt-edged chances? Probably not. So I think that's where we probably need to. Yeah, we need to kick on from just that improving performance to something where we're going to actually see an end product. Tom G, from your point of view, first half, any sort of standouts for you? What did you like?
Well, it's funny because I think last week we were saying Sanyo's can't play centre back, and I think for me definitely one of the standout points was him and Harley Dean. Oh, no, one actually Harley Dean playing well together.
Yeah.
I think we all spoke on WhatsApp saying if there's a couple of times where the ball went over the top, and obviously it was offside. I think in the first half a couple of times. But it did look dangerous. Maybe against another team, it would have paid off. But I think, as on a whole, I think it'd be hard to split between them two. Really, I think again Bella played absolutely brilliant. I think even in the games where we don't look like, as you said, creating many chances, he's our bright spark down that left hand side. He can turn a player, put it past him, get to the byline. So I'd probably say Bella, Sanchez, and Sanyo. Sorry, Dean and Sanyo. Sorry.
Yeah, I do you know what? And I never thought I'd say this. Fucking, I don't know whether I want
to. Praise Dean, you want to.
I tell you what, he looked like Beckenbauer coming out of defence at times. It was unbelievable. It was, and I tell you what, he did it against Middlesbrough, and you can't, because we are so, I think at times a little bit pedestrian with our build-up.
Yeah.
When he breaks out of centre half and takes a risk, and that is the risk reward piece. If he sells a striker a dummy to get past him and actually advance into the middle third, the impact it has on our play is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And I would encourage him, and again, I didn't think I'd ever say this, I'd encourage him to do more of it because it's really effective, and I think that his confidence is building. I've always said, first and foremost, he's a defender. And I think he spends too much time trying to get, the wonder goal rather than actually focusing on his job. But having said that, the way that he's carrying the ball out of defence, and Tom G, I'd agree, I think San Jose, he's so composed on the ball that, again, I think that's quite a positive sign and something hopefully that we can build on. And I know we talked about the back line, but that they looked incredibly well drilled. Preston were, they were a threat up front. Lots of pace, lots of movement, but that 4-man unit were really, really good at stepping up. And I think as we went into the end of the half, it came at the wrong time for us because we were absolutely all over them last 10 minutes of that first half. But then, Tom, as you mentioned, second half. I know that we're going to come out stronger, but Tom, where do you think the problems came from? Because it was obvious it was chalk and cheese. Where did you think the problems came from?
For me, it was the pace of Preston's play compared to the speed we had at the back. And I think a lot of Blues fans on Twitter, I think even we touched upon it on WhatsApp, they were looking to get those balls over the top and get in behind. But in the second half, they tried something a bit different in the sense that they tried kind of a fast build-up approach through the middle. Yeah. And it worked for them, and they've got those quick players. And I don't think we have really any fast defensive players that are able to cover ground, to mark certain players like that. You've got to be better with your positioning if you're coming up against pacey opposition. And in that second half, I think we looked to kind of get on from where we left off. But Preston were just so energetic from the off that it kind of caught us by surprise. And classic home form, heads went down, really.
Yeah. Tom G, what was your sort of takeout from, I think it's probably fair to say, certainly first 20 minutes, I would no longer than that, first 20 minutes of the second half. Where did you see the differences? What were your observations of that?
Yeah, I think it happens a lot in football, doesn't it? When, as you say, as Tom and you both said, I agree with you. I think in the first half we were all over them. the half time come at a wrong point really, and I think sometimes it just happens in football where the opposing team probably had a bit of a word off the manager, and then they've come out up for it a bit more, and a bit like what we were to them in the first half. I thought was very similar how they was to us in the second half. Maybe I don't know I think Keith and Bell and Sunjic, I think they both looked a little bit tired in the midfield. Probably playing 2 games back to back. Maybe making a change there wouldn't have gone amiss. But yeah, I just thought again I thought we were unlucky really in the whole of it. I don't think we on the whole deserve to lose the game anyway.
I think that the problem when you're in the situation that we're in, and I think the run of form, taking sort of Borough out of the equation, but just in general, I think over the last probably half a dozen to 10 games, when we drop off or if we have a poor 20 minutes, we get punished. And that's just unfortunately the way that it is. And, they hit the post before they scored. I think for me, where I was incredibly impressed with that back line and the discipline in the first half, they were all over the shop for the first 10 or 15 minutes with full back sitting in, San Jose dropping off. But the other thing that I think was similar to this, funnily enough, the way that we started the first half against Man City with Sunjic and Kiftembel, I think they just got a little bit too optimistic at the start of the second half, and rather than sitting and protecting, there seemed to be a massive void between our centre halves and ultimately 2 defensive midfielders. Whereas they should have been like glue. So when you've got Sinclair sort of buzzing around in between the thirds, both players were in advance of him, as in further up the pitch. Because whether we were a bit sort of this is going to be easy, got a bit complacent. That was really disappointing from me. And Tom, I agree with you. We knew what was going to happen. They were absolutely going to come at us. And if we'd have used the same, I think, discipline that we had against Middlesbrough, which was get involved, get the challenges, don't let them play like that, then we would have had to weather the storm. But I think if we'd have just kept our shape a little bit more, then I think we would have nullified them because they were there for the taking. And we said on WhatsApp during the first half, if we'd have got a goal, they were right. It was over. It was absolutely over. But it's unfortunately a bit of the same old. They obviously got that first 20 minutes absolutely in the bag as far as the performance was concerned, and then we saw obviously the substitution started. So, Tom G, your thoughts on the substitutions, players sort of off and in?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it worked quite well, to be honest. I think certainly when Halilovic come on, he played a real part, and I think in that position there, I think right with Terrell, I think he does lay some touches off, but for me personally, I think he goes a little bit missing in games, and he doesn't tend to complete like many games anyway. And I think Halilovic, I thought when he got on the ball, I thought he looked real good. He was switching it out to the wingers as well as Lecco when he came on. I thought he was brilliant. Just offers that something a bit different. I mean, obviously Sanchez, Bella. I think Bella, he was looking a little bit tired, and then obviously when Lecco came on, it was just sort of took over from where he left off. But for me, definitely, I think Halilovic. I think after that, I think I'd probably, I'd consider starting him in the next game if it was me anyway.
Yeah, we'll touch on him in a sec. Tom, just want to get your thoughts on. We mentioned in the last pod that there seems to be a default. You get to an hour, he makes a load of changes. Probably get to 75 minutes, and he makes another ton of changes. Would you agree? Maybe this game it warranted a change when he did.
Yeah, I think it warranted a change. Did I agree with some of the changes he made? Not so much. I feel bringing on Halilovic was brilliant. He looked so good on the ball, really composed, looked to create things, got our attackers more in the game, brought people into good areas of the pitch, and he looked to be what we've been missing. And I know you've mentioned it, obviously, he could play that sort of Grealish role for us, but we'll talk about that later. But I think he was the brightest, probably sparkle sign in that entire game for us in the end. Just seeing that promise. But what I didn't agree with was bringing on certain players. When you're going to bring on Duke, you want good crossers of the ball. And to bring on Gary Gardner and other players like that are more midfielders than they are wingers, it just didn't make too much sense to me.
Yeah.
So
No,
I don't know. But...
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think there are a couple of players that we're probably lucky to stay on. In my view, the way they sort of started the second half. But yeah, I mean, I don't get Gardner on the right hand side simply because when you're chasing a game and you want somebody to be a bit more probably dynamic and better on the ball, then Sunjic has to come off. I mean, he has to go, and maybe Kieftenbeld. You've got to really change it up because if we're chasing the game and 1-0 down with say 25 to go, I'd rather go down 2 or 3 and really go for it and chase the game with an element of, to your point, a bit of thought behind it, because if we've got Bella and Lecco or Bella and Sanchez, or a combination of two out of the three of those, then Duke is going to be a lot more effective. But I doubt very much that Gary Gardner's going to do a Cruyff turn and sort of tie him up in knots and get to the byline. I haven't seen that, to be fair. What I have seen him do is what we needed, and that's really put his mark on the game in the middle of the pitch. So yeah, that was a little bit bizarre. But having said that, and I've said it, unfortunately, I don't know what pod it was on, but Sunjic, why does he always get himself into that position with like a minute to go? I swear to God, there must have been, I reckon there's been 7 games where he's had a gilt-edged chance with 5 minutes to go, and he has never, ever looked like scoring, ever. It's so annoying. So yeah, I just think that, yeah, subs, we needed them. Were they I think the players he brought on, definitely. The players he took off, probably not. And maybe that's something for him to consider. But we did talk about Halilovic, and I think that warrants a bit more of a further discussion. I think I mentioned one of the players that we've actually lost out on. He's gone out to Hull in Dan Crowley. There has been times where he's shown that sort of similar, I think, dynamism on the ball. But the key difference with Halilovic, and I hate to say the word Grealish, by the way, but it's my only point of reference. So please don't slate me on social media. But I think that the way he was picking the ball up, which was literally everywhere. So that was 5 yards off the centre halves, turning, looking to make short 5-yard passes, playing it around their midfielders, being really dynamic, really aggressive, lots of sort of spraying the ball with the outside of his right peg. I mean, it was like, and I think, Tom, you just made the point. From what I wasn't disappointed with the performance really for the Blues. I think we were just terrible for 20 minutes and we got punished for it, and we've got to learn from that. But if anybody, from a neutral point of view, watched that game, they would have seen Halilovic come on and they'd have said, B, who is he? And C, surely to Christ, he's got to play, and we've got to invest time in him now. Because for me, if you're going to put a badge on him as a number 10, and Tom G, you made the point about Terrell. He doesn't play as a 10 for me. He's basically a second striker. And if you're going to play a 10 and you're going to have somebody with that sort of ability on the ball, they have to come and get it. They've got to come deep and get the ball. You think about all the best number 10s in world football. They don't just stand on the shoulder of a striker. So Tom G, from a Halilovic point of view, do you think it would be? I know you mentioned maybe for Terrell. Would anybody else? Do you think potentially he could come in for?
I think it's hard really. I think for me, you're probably going to have to give up either Kieftenbeld or Sunjic. Is he going to give up that 2 defensive midfielders to put him in there? I'd probably not. But I completely agree with what you're saying. I think it's a little bit like what we've, as you said, what we've been crying out in for an England team for years. Someone just to pick up the ball like Grealish and actually just move forward and pass it forwards rather than sideways or backwards. So I think maybe fitting him in somewhere, like you say, for me, I think probably number 10 role I would play him in there just in front of the 2. But as you say, we'll see what happens on that one. But definitely, I think, as you said, in terms of if anyone else was watching the game, or I think a lot of people would have been saying, "Oh, why isn't he starting for Blues?" I thought, as you say, just coming for the ball, dropping the shoulder, just dinking it over the top. He just when he's running with the ball, he's not looking down. He's looking around the pitch. He knows where everything is. He looks like a real player.
Yeah. And Tom, do you think we'll be patient enough with him? As in, if he plays, it's one of those. He ain't a Sunjic. He's not a Clifton Belt. He's something completely different. And if I think back to when Jude Bellingham first came into the team, there were a couple of times where he got caught on the ball and it cost us for a couple of goals. But he then obviously developed into the player that, crikey, what a player he is. So do you think we'll be patient enough with a player like that?
I hope so. And I think Aitor Karanka is more likely to be patient than previous managers we've had. But he is one of those, like kind of Gary Rowett used to be, quite reluctant to bring new players on right from the start that we've signed them. So I don't know. I think we should be patient, but we've showed with players like Dan Crowley that we struggle to give them a chance in their natural position for a start, and also that element of patience. So I hope we are, because we should be, because there's a reason he has the resume that he has, that he's been at Barca, he's been at AC Milan. He's got these rave reviews because there's a proper player there.
Yeah.
And I do think we need to utilise that. And we'd be silly not to give him more game time and try and develop him and just be patient, see what he can bring to us. We've seen glimpses, and just going off those glimpses alone, he should be in the squad, really.
No, I think that I'm a big fan of. You mentioned the teams that he's played for, and he's certainly been in and around, the best teams in Europe. And let's be fair, he wouldn't have been the star player at either of those clubs, but he's a very talented footballer. And I think maybe there's time for him now to come to a club where we can just say, just do what you want, just go on the pitch and play your natural game. Because we've got enough defensive-minded players in that team that if he's really expressing himself with a bit of freedom, what have we got to lose? Because if you haven't got that, then we're so pedestrian at times in possession, moving forward, sideways, back to the keeper. I'm desperate to see, and I'll talk about our signing, which is a good segue. Just somebody coming short from midfield to pick up the ball on the half turn and look to see if he can develop the play in front of him. Very, very few players over many years have done that for Blues. And I think, I could go back to maybe Barry Ferguson, who was one guy that was never shy, was always brave, always confident in his own ability. And with the system that we've got now, I think we've got license to give somebody like Halilovic that, I think, carte blanche to say, just do what you want to do, because we've got all these guys behind you in a formation that we won't get broken down. So if you get caught in possession or you try a pass that might not be on, don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're good at. And I think if we can do that, I'm with both of you. I think we've got an unbelievable play in our hands there, and it'd be absolutely bloody just crazy if we don't look to develop that, because we haven't got anything else. So, let's hope there's a future star there. Tom, you made a really good point then. So you said when players come in, there's maybe a reluctance to throw them in. So we've obviously had with the transfer window still open, we've done our first bit of business with Rekeem Harper. I've seen some bits and pieces. Very impressed, but I can't base everything on maybe sort of 10 minutes on YouTube. So I'm going to throw this out to you, Tom, because you just made the comments. A, what do you know about him? And B, do you think he goes straight in, and probably C, who does he come in for?
Yeah, I think when I first heard about us possibly signing him, I was a bit meh. I was like, is that really the area we need to be improving right now? But when I sat down and thought about it, and watched us play recently, I do think we're missing that kind of player in midfield. Do I think it was the most needed position to strengthen? No, but I'm happy with the signing. And from what I've seen, I've gone and looked at him. He played quite a few games for West Brom 2 seasons ago, so the first team experience is there. I saw his goal against Rotherham a couple of years ago. Very, very composed finish. He's a bit of a box-to-box midfield, and I think this is definitely a now or never chance for him. So I think we have nothing to lose in signing him. He'll definitely come with bags of determination and motivation, because if he wants a career at a Premier League club like West Brom, then he's got to shine on this loan spell. So I think we'll definitely come in for someone right now. It would have to be Sunjic. That's just down to form. I'd say, on paper, you look at Keith Bell and Sunjic, you'd say Sunjic probably has a bit more quality, but Keith Bell is so much more consistent. Yeah. And right now, what we need more than anything is consistency. So I think Harper can come into Sunjic's role, but be a bit more of a box-to-box midfielder and just get about a bit more, add some attacking threat, which we need at home ASAP, really. But he also kind of reminds me of Jude Bellingham a bit from his play. Definitely that kind of box-to-box style, can play all over, really. He's got a lot to his game, and I'm excited to see him. I am.
Yeah. Tom G, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, same as Tom said, I watched him a few times for Albion a couple of years ago. I think he's 20 years old, and I think for his age, he comes with a lot of experience, which often normally that's the thing that they lack at that age. So again, I hate to say it because I do love Sunjic, but I think the last number of games now, I don't think he looks the same player as he did. Does he look a little bit burnt out? Maybe, I'm not sure, but I think in terms of that, maybe I think Harper, as Tom just said, will it probably come in for him. And I think, as you said before, John, that when Sunjic was on the end of that chance, if it's you want a proper box-to-box midfielder, I think I'd take my chances on Harper. Probably putting that one away, as Tom said. He's a decent finisher of the ball. So I don't think we particularly needed a centre midfielder. But I think, as you said, with the ones that we've already got, I think there's a couple of them not quite pulling the weight. Again, as we spoke about before, for me, it's just down to consistency. One game that's it, play really well. Next game they don't play so well. So I think he'll be a good addition to the team.
Yeah, and I think that Sunjic, am I a fan? I am, just based on his enthusiasm. Yeah. But I do think he's got his limitations. I think his range of passing is limited. Having said that, if Harper comes in alongside Clifton Bell, something happens to Clifton Bell, or he's not going to necessarily be able to play the amount of football that's going, that's coming around the corner. He'd probably be the first to say that he can play every game. But just being realistic, that if Clifton Bell needs to be subbed, then we've got Sunjic who can fill in virtually identically. So you all of a sudden you've got a blend just in front of the back two, where you've got somebody that's always going to be, their default is always going to be to protect and defend. And then if you've got somebody that's a little bit more dynamic like Harper, then it does change things quite a lot. It's just whether Karanka is prepared in that system to play somebody like Harper that is probably a little bit more on the front foot. And time will tell on that, because he's probably not too dissimilar to Gary Gardner in the way that he plays. It's just whether whether Karanka says, well, I don't know whether he thinks Gardner's a winger. He's probably the only one in the UK who does, but he keeps playing him there. So whether he doesn't fancy him in that too, then if he doesn't fancy Gardner, then I'm struggling a bit to see why he'd fancy Harper, even though I would do it. That I would, having seen him today. Again, there's enough footage of him picking the ball up deep, opening up play. He's a great dribbler of the ball. He gets his toe in. So I was very underwhelmed when I got the news, but that probably says more about me because I didn't have a clue who he was. And then when you do some research, you can say, well, actually, given what's happened against Middlesbrough and Preston, maybe we just did need that little bit more dynamism in that sort of two in front of the four. So yeah, the proof in the pudding is going to be the eating. He's going to be definitely motivated. And we mentioned, I think, on the last pod that if we're going to draft anybody in, we want to get somebody in that's really got a point to prove, and I think he has. So I guess fingers crossed. And we've got 10 days for him to settle in and hopefully fall into a system that we can put out next time around. So then the other thing from the game, and we touched on it regarding transfers. in the last pod. Hogan's hamstring, it wasn't a tear, but he was obviously feeling it. Does that mean he's going to be out? I think Karanka after the game said he was a bit sort of non-committal, but given that it was probably only an hour after the game, he's going to be that. So is now the need, Tom G, that we've got to get a striker if Hogan is at best borderline fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about this last week, didn't we? And I think I do think we need a striker. Even regardless, if you ask me, if Hogan was fit anyway. Obviously, he played well the other day. I thought he played really well actually in the game against Middlesbrough. He was really lively, chesting balls down in the middle, laying it off, making runs. And I think it's a shame that he has got an injury. So I hope he's not out for too long. But in terms of who we can go out there and get, as we said before, I don't think that there's not. It's going to be a difficult one really. Without having the funds to spend, as you say, whether we can pick up another, obviously not Harper as a midfield, whether we can pick up someone else like that off a local club or a Premier League club just on loan, just to take the chance. I think that's probably our best bet really.
Yeah, and Tom, has there been? Have you heard anything? Have you as far as any other signings or? Personally, from your point of view, would the focus now be on a striker?
Yeah, I think for me, the focus should be on a striker because obviously Juki's not getting that much game time anyway, but he's not providing even when he is on. Hogan's not, even though he's our top scorer, he's not exactly been consistent this season.
It's top scorer with 3.
Exactly. So, well, it just says a lot about the team this season.
To be fair, he's only 2 in front of the Cheltenham keeper, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a quality goal, that was.
He broke Guinness World Record for that.
To be fair, if Sunjic had been in our own penalty area in the last minute, he'd have probably scored. He hit the ball. So,
he'd have found the top corner. But no, I'd actually say this Scott Hogan injury is a blessing in disguise. And obviously, I wish him the best of recovery, and it'd be good to get him back fit because he is probably one of our few players that is actually firing in goals here and there. So, no, I just think it's now a time where we should definitely look at a striker because one of our main strikers is injured. So I feel like we have to. We'd be stupid not to.
Yeah.
So, there's no reason why we can't dip into the loan market again from a local club or look at the lower leagues for a permanent transfer. But I definitely think we should look at a player that's got nothing to lose and all to prove. So, yeah, I'd be shocked if we didn't bring in a striker, to be honest. Disappointed.
I think you're absolutely right, and I suppose the thing is now, and as we sort of look to wrap things up here, I think obviously there's a big gap now between games, which I think suits us, because we haven't got momentum because obviously we'd still patchy a win and a loss, but he's definitely got something to build on there, 100%. And I think for me, the next 10 days is about honing, I guess, the positives and really sort of drilling the team. So Tom, I'm just going to say to you, if you were Karanka now and over the next 10 days and you had that squad of players, what would your sort of key focus be based on, what we've seen so far? Maybe not over the full season, but certainly over recent weeks. Where would you say the focus should be?
Obviously, improving the home form is a big one. And I read an interview with Alex Neil, the Preston manager, and he said, he had the same issue when they had 7 consecutive home losses at the start of the season, but they never actually focused on turning around the home form. They just focused on putting in a good performance every match. Yeah. And I think maybe if we adopted that kind of mindset and went into the game like it's a football game, not a home game, in the sense, like, just have the mindset of we're going on a football pitch at the end of the day. We just need to put in the best possible performance we can. And if we do that, then you never know. We could start to pick up points. I think even a draw at this point would just put everyone out their misery a little bit. So, yeah, I think that's definitely a key thing that needs to be sorted out as soon as possible. their authors. One other thing as well would be I know a lot of people have said on Twitter, like, oh, you can't blame the pitch size for our recent home performances, but stats don't lie. You look at the statistics of where we've picked up points this season, they have been on wide pitches, and we've rarely picked up anything on smaller pitches like St Andrews. And based off those stats, I'm not saying it's the main problem, but it's a little thing that we can improve. Anything right now to help the home form would be big. So, you've got to look at maybe making the pitch wider, because there is a lot of room around the pitch at the moment, because I think it wasn't that long ago they actually made it smaller. So, I don't know.
I think on that, one of my biggest bugbears, and I have no doubt over the coming weeks, everybody's going to... It's not Harley Dean this week. Why doesn't Sanchez play on the left? Why doesn't he play on the... He's the most left-footed player. It's beyond... We've got a narrow pitch. You play somebody on the right who's left-footed. Guess what? You get him to cut in and Colin gets on the overlap. But then Colin is sort of getting forward, in my view, maybe a little bit too much, because as soon as Sanchez cuts in, he's got to go. And then it exposes, and all of a sudden we're playing three at the back. Whereas if he just said, right, Lecco on the right or Bella on the right, I think Lecco is probably more of a right-footed player. I think Bella's pretty much both feet. And just have Sanchez on the left and try it. Who knows what could happen? Yeah. But just to have somebody that's so left-pegged to get to the byline, to whip crosses and keep that pitch wide, for me, it's the biggest no-brainer ever. And, I haven't seen many world-class left wingers play on the right side. Just haven't. Consistently throughout their career.
Bar Lionel Messi, and that's about it.
But I mean, he's a 10, isn't he?
That's what Messi, I think. I was just, if I can just add to that, Joe, I totally agree with you. My opinion on it is, I think, unless you've got Rashford or Sterling, who's got absolute bags and bags of pace, there's not many, apart from the elite, there's not many other teams who, can play the right-footed onto the left-footed on the right-hand side and cut inside. Most teams just look to whip the ball in, like Sheffield United, teams like that. They just get the ball into the box. So,
couldn't agree more.
I mean, but from answering my own question, I'd love him to try and work on that. And just on the pitch, was it great? No. Did the monsoon help? Definitely not. I don't like this. If Cov didn't play there, I get it, but I don't know what the commercial deal is. Maybe we need the money. I'm a big fan of helping clubs out like Cov. Football's a family at the end of the day. I don't think the pitch it didn't make Sunjic miss that chance in the last minute. It didn't. So, I think it's just convenience. And having been going to Blues for a very, very long time, the pitches back in the day, that literally was like a carpet last night compared to some of the pitches, from years ago. But anyway, that's just me showing my age. Tom G, so what would your sort of, just finally, if you had the team, you had the squad, what would you be looking to do? Where would you be looking to, really work on for the next 10 days?
Just to touch on that point about, the home form and that, I think I don't really get, especially at the minute, I think, home form, with no fans in the ground, it baffles me, I'll be honest with you. The only thing I can think of is, you're travelling, obviously, a few hours away, you're going into a different surrounding, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't see why we can't play the way we do away when we're at home. I think definitely without the fans in. Again, I think, the pitch, it was bad. It weren't brilliant. I think we had about 10, 15 minutes of terrible, terrible weather. But other than that, I think, it's just, you don't, if we'd have won the game, we wouldn't even be talking about that now, would we? So, but I think in terms of preparation, I think you've got, like you say, a number of days now with them. And I think, as you said before, I think they've got to, really, fine tune this team now, really, and see, where we can, what positions we can look to get players in to pick up the ball deeper, as we've said, and take the ball forward. I think as well as we played over the last couple of games, I think, as we've said, like there's a lot of times where Dean or San Jose or Colin or the left back, gets the ball, and we don't. When Hogan's isolated or Jukovic is isolated up front, Terrell's sort of walking around, and we don't look like we can get the ball to anyone. So for me, I think we've just got to work it. If I was Karanka now, I'd just be working getting the ball through the lines. Just breaking through the attacking lines, really.
Yeah, no, I would wholeheartedly agree with that, and I would certainly be, just focusing purely on the Croatian Messi to try and breathe some life into the team, because he certainly got it. That is for sure. Right, guys, that's great. Thanks a lot for your time. And for everybody, we've got obviously a bit of a break now, but it doesn't mean the pod isn't going to be landing next week. We've got a bit of a special edition that's going to be coming out on Tuesday, and we're lucky enough to have an interview with ex-Blues keeper Colin Doyle. Big servant to the club over many, many years. And we'll be looking to get an insight into how his career went at St Andrews, what he's doing now, and what the future holds. So until then, thanks very much for listening. And we'll catch up next week. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.